2001, when AFRUCA started up, there was very little awareness about the nature of the problem of trafficking children into the United Kingdom. It was very difficult to go to the police and say there is a trafficking problem. It was very difficult to go to social services and say there is a problem of domestic servitude. They just didn't believe it existed.
It is called AFRUCA. AFRUCA, a charity promoting the well-being and protection of children and families in Black and minority ethnic communities across the UK. In 2001, after the reported horrific deaths of some newly arrived immigrant children, Debbie Ario, a UK civil servant, started Africans Unite Against Child Abuse to help advocate for the rights and welfare of African children.
Well, I was elected MP for Hackney South and Shoreditch in 2005, and I represent an area that's got a large African population, but it wasn't long before I was elected that the torso of Adam that was found in the Thames, which highlighted some of the very serious issues about abuse among some African children. And so AFRUCA were a great ally in taking on some of these issues.
But my reason for setting up AFRUCA in 2001 was simply because we had a number of children from Africa, newly arrived children like Victoria Klimbie and Damilola Taylor and some other children arriving, and shortly afterwards we're hearing about them being killed by people, other young people or adults, their carers, and it was an issue that really affected me, especially because Victoria Klimbie was about the same age as my daughter at that time, about 8-9 years old. And I really wanted to do something to help. I wanted to help to educate people about protecting children from abuse, educate parents about how to ensure the safety of their children. And, but of course I was working full-time in the civil service at that time. So I wasn't even thinking of setting up an organization. I just wanted to do something in my spare time to help. And that mutated into AFRUCA as we know it today. So it wasn't a direct, oh, I'm going to set up a charity. It was something that happened as a consequence of some actions that I took.
I used to teach in a school in Tottenham where I'd met this young man, and he presented as overly deferential, extremely timid. I was so concerned about him. I just gave him my email just by chance and said, if you ever need any help, you can contact me. So I thought I'd never hear from him again. And then 6 months later, he emailed me, and slowly a little bit of the story came out, which at the time I had no understanding of. And slowly over the weeks, he'd started telling me a few things about the life that he'd led, but he actually didn't want to say too much because he knew. He actually said to me, I know you'll cry, you'll get upset, I don't want to tell you. Some nights I would actually go to bed crying with frustration and anger that nobody would help me. One of the things that I found out and experienced when I was trying to help this young man was that I had gone to social services, I'd gone to housing, I'd gone to education, I'd gone to my MP, I'd gone to the High Commission in Nigeria, I'd gone to the Nigerian Embassy in London, and nobody would help me, nobody. So just through a chance meeting, I contacted Kurt Barling at the BBC, and he came to meet me. And when he started doing some research about it, because again I think the story was new to him, it was such a horrific story, he then did some research and found out about AFRUCA. And I think when I found out about AFRUCA, it was like a weight had been taken off my shoulders.
AFRUCA was quickly recognized for its work as a go-to source of support, advice and training on a range of issues affecting children and young people, used by a wide range of agencies working with them, which required assistance to address many of the emerging challenges they face.
I was a victim of child exploitation at the time. I've been working since I was 14. There's no reason for a child to be working at that age, but I believed it was normal. I had to work to get my school uniform, I had to work, the sense of working has been there since then. And it wasn't until I met Debbie did I realize that that was not normal. The day I met Auntie Debbie was a game changer for me. That was the day that I started to write my own story. I always get emotional when I talk about this because that conversation was so important. When I first spoke to her and she said to me, "You're a traffic victim," and I said, "What is that?" And then I went home and I checked Google to find out what trafficking meant.
Being an African and they sharing their experiences of how they've journeyed into the UK, right, under such terrible circumstances, right? It gives them hope. I've heard young people tell me, "Oh, it's the first time I feel someone is listening to me. It's the first time I feel I'm being heard." So, and you've seen people go from being shy or timid or even not even wanting to engage initially, right? To them now having that, knowing fully well that AFRUCA supports them and opening up to them and sharing their experiences and knowing fully well that AFRUCA will go all the lengths to make sure, that they get all the support they need in their journey towards recovery.
I was given a befriender from AFRUCA. She was amazing. Part of her support was to always make sure she checks up on me and help me out with things that I needed help with. She also went a bit extra and would bring me food parcels and things that I needed at that time. She would actually also take me on trips. So, and she was amazing, and she is still a friend today. She's like an auntie now, she's a family. And also the support from AFRUCA, they've been so amazing, financially, emotionally, counseling is literally, I've received all from them. They have been so supportive in bringing up my baby, in providing for her, and the accommodation we've got now. Her bed was bought by AFRUCA. My cooker was bought by AFRUCA to support with, starting a new life and building my home and decorating my home. That service was amazing.
The impact of AFRUCA's work on survivors was enormous. I would say the impact it's something you see immediately. It's instant. As soon as they connect with AFRUCA, right? They walk into the AFRUCA office, and you see them down in our room where we engage with young people, and they open up to start telling their stories.
From its early years, it was very clear that AFRUCA's work was much needed across the country. AFRUCA staff members worked hard to expand the charity's work across the north of England. And in 2009, May Ikeora, an AFRUCA staff member, relocated from London to Manchester to help start AFRUCA's new office there.
I was working from London as a national project officer, and I ran projects, I ran trainings in London, but also in Manchester and Newcastle as well. When we got funding to run the same training in Newcastle, Liverpool and Manchester, I had to move to Manchester to run that project. Also to look into expanding some of AFRUCA's work, which we already did in London, but to make sure that we did the same work in Manchester. So things like our national training program, one of the things we did in Manchester, but also to look out for more ways to support African families, and not just African families, but black and ethnic minority families in the north of England.
Manchester have got a really long and enduring relationship with AFRUCA. We've known Debbie and AFRUCA since about 2004, where we worked together on a conference here in Manchester. Over the years, we've continued to work with Debbie and the team, and particularly drawing on the expertise of the social workers who've helped us work and support many of our families here in the city, particularly helping us understand and have a better appreciation of both the sort of cultural issues within family, but also helping us keep a really strong focus on safeguarding.
I mean, AFRUCA has been fantastic at going where other people have feared to tread, partly because it's of the communities that it talks about, and it's able to have some very hard-hitting conversations within those communities, but it's really crucial that it's really done very well at being a bridge between communities where there is concern about what's happening and a community that frankly is pale and male, and female too, but pale and not really understanding some of the issues in communities and being slightly frightened, if you like, to talk about it. And we cannot be frightened to talk about abuse of children wherever it's happening. And AFRUCA has provided both expertise and a space to have those discussions and bring different generations of different communities on board and tackling this issue. I think it needs a much louder voice in the heart of government, actually, but it's been doing a fantastic job as it stands.
AFRUCA has continued to lead the conversation about the abuse, trafficking and exploitation of African children in the UK, serving as a bridge between the African community and the statutory agencies working with children and families.
In terms of playing that bridging role between the community and the statutory, government, local authority, national, I think we've done that very well. The core of that is helping to highlight without fear key issues affecting children in the black community. And that has come with its own issues, of course, because sometimes people are not happy about talking about particular issues. So for example, issues around branding children as witches, issues around trafficking of children, using children for domestic slavery. All those issues are issues that some people will say to you that, but this is our culture, or this is our religion, and you're trying to raise this issue because you want to get a grant from the government, but it's not about that. It's about protecting children from abuse and harm.
AFRUCA has raised the awareness, and as a consequence of raising the awareness, forced the authorities to look at the problem and come up with remedies to tackle the problem.
And later I became a minister in 2007, and I was responsible for some of the child safeguarding issues, and so I was very keen to make sure that abuse in African communities, everything from abuse in communities to trafficking, was properly addressed and understood. And it was then that Debbie Arrio became a member of a really important government board to advise the government on some of these issues.
The bridge is successful because also what it does is enables AFRUCA to have conversations with communities or individuals, particularly when there's fear. And when we look at modern slavery and human trafficking, what we know is that fear and anxiety is a significant pull factor. Many of our survivors report and share their experiences, but only after they feel safe and also where they've built that relationship of trust. And what AFRUCA is able to do, more importantly, is also say that actually inequalities, patriarchy and exclusion is a significant factor in terms of the vulnerability to exploitation. And by exposing and standing up for communities, children, women and survivors, they're actually able to hold local authorities and other partners to account.
We're still doing what we started to do in 2001. And so that gives you a lot of credibility. Credibility with partner organizations, credibility within the community in which you're working, like the BME community, the Black community, African community. Credibility amongst people who come to use your service. They know they can rely on you to help and support them. Credibility amongst people who fund you. So we have a good history, track record.
I came to learn about AFRUCA's work in January 2018. So when I was nominated by my fellow councillor colleagues to be the civic mayor to take up the post in May 2019, a local resident, Aminona Araba, told me about their good work and if I could perhaps consider using my role as a civic mayor to help raise their profile as a charity. And I thought about it and I researched about them and saw that they were doing some really good work. So I decided to take them on as an official mayoral charity during my civic year.
How I chose AFRUCA to be one of my charities. During my tenure as a mayor, you are entitled to choose 2 charities, and I chose AFRUCA because I believe that there is a gap within the policy that AFRUCA fits for the community. That is in regarding safeguarding of children of African heritage within the borough and outside as well. So I chose AFRUCA as one of my charities.
Due to the impact nature of its work, AFRUCA quickly garnered support from high-profile individuals, especially in the Black and African community. AFRUCA is very clear that its role in the Black community is not just safeguarding children, but also to help build the community and create opportunities for its members.
There are 2 aims. One is you'll find it on the website, you see it on social media, it's all there in terms of our object, which is to help prevent harm towards children, to help protect children from abuse and harm. That's on one hand. But on the other hand is a kind of like unwritten objective, which is to help improve the lives of BME people in this country. So create job opportunities for people. I'm sure people have maybe not paid like the private sector, but they're well paid enough and the payment is regular, give access to opportunities like training, learning and development, whether they're working for us, whether they're doing internship, they're doing work experience, whether they're volunteering for us, whether they're a trustee of the charity, a full-time staff member. The idea is to help grow people as well, to give them opportunities. So if they decide to move on from AFRUCA, they've got a wealth of skills that they can take with them to help them, to move on, into other careers. So, I see AFRUCA's role twofold in that sense, helping to prevent abuse towards children, and of course, helping to build the capacity of our community so our own people can also move on and progress and have access to good quality jobs.
The impact also goes beyond them as a service user in AFRUCA, right? They become an AFRUCA family, such that we attend their graduations, we attend wedding ceremonies, we attend baby dedication.
In its 20 years of existence, AFRUCA's impact has been quite significant, and for many of its beneficiaries, it is life-changing.
The support that I received from AFRUCA had a great impact in my life. I thank God I'm here today. So it is a life-changing experience because, at the time that I went to uni, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Going into uni to do that, and the position I was given by Debbie as well at AFRUCA, it was like I go to uni on Monday, I get a theory, and I can come to AFRUCA on Tuesday to practice that theory. That was how it was for me. It was an amazing 3 years, and that's because of AFRUCA.
In an ideal world, there shouldn't be any need for an organisation like this, but thank goodness there is, because they have touched the lives of so many young people and made such a huge difference in their lives.
AFRUCA is a necessary part of the ecosystem of safeguarding children. And whilst it might not have the funds that social services departments have, that police departments have, and other public agencies have, and probably doesn't get enough resource to do that, I think it has become increasingly a valued resource. Of course, many institutions don't get the financial support, even when they're valued. But I think you can't underestimate the impact that AFRUCA had on this whole area of child trafficking and child harm, the need to safeguard children of African origin, which would have been overlooked had it not been for such an organisation?
I remember that there was a time we went to the House of Parliament with AFRUCA, Debbie Ario and the team to explain the significance of how children are being trafficked and what AFRUCA is doing to support and to, if not eradicate, at least to reduce that. And in that quest, I remember the Home Office gave them some grants so that they can run this trafficking issue with Africans.
Recently, demand for AFRUCA's work across the country and from wider communities led AFRUCA to expand the scope of its work so it can support more children and families beyond the African community.
When AFRUCA was established 20 years ago, the object was primarily working with African families. The landscape have changed since then, and AFRUCA was being approached to work more widely with black families. So, we consulted, and as a result of that, in 2020, we changed the name to AFRUCA Safeguarding Children. And that's primarily really so that we are now working with a wide range of black and ethnic minorities, children and families.
Well, I think if you're looking at this issue at all, you go to AFRUCA as a really key place to pick up on the research, the knowledge and the expertise and connections that AFRUCA has. Now, I think that this is an issue where, if you look at trafficking, which Theresa May, when she was Prime Minister, clearly championed a great deal, and those issues that around abuse in particularly domestic settings, it is really important that the people who are looking at this and trying to tackle this speak authentically with the voice of the community that they're working with. And I think there is a very big difference between AFRUCA raising these issues and somebody with a clipboard, if you like, from Whitehall storming in and trying to do something about it. So it's actually, I think they need much better support, but it's important that they maintain their strong independent voice and ability to call anyone out, be that government, be that abusers, be that traffickers or whoever. And I think that's one of the things that I find amazingly about working with AFRUCA. They do not worry about if they upset somebody. They treat everyone without fear or favour. They call out when they see something wrong, whether that be government or whether that be community-based, and they have got practical solutions and do very good research, which gives people like me and policymakers tools to do their job better.
We may not always know that that's going on or hear about it, and the local press or the national press doesn't always pick those stories up. So AFRUCA has really worked quite hard to raise awareness of both trafficking and safeguarding of children in the African and Caribbean community. And I know that they've helped many children here in terms of safeguarding, but also providing advice to us as a council in how we can make our services and approaches to this issue more culturally appropriate, because Barking and Dagenham is a very diverse place and we have people coming from all over the globe to live and work here, but sometimes sort of cultural norms and identities are different, and people from different communities may not necessarily understand the law around safeguarding and around child abuse and what is and isn't acceptable. And so AFRUCA has had a real role in educating us as councillors, as officers, but also going out into the community, going to the churches and talking to the pastors and talking to the congregations about the work and about the signs of child abuse and what they can do as pillars of our local community to also help work on this issue.
The impact of the Child Protection Service. So firstly, for professionals that we work with. So our aim is to support professionals to develop their skills when working with families from black and minority ethnic families. So that's being able to take into account their cultural needs and to be able to work with them in the best possible way so that they're assessing the family fairly and appropriately to their needs. Then also in terms of the families that we work with, so we want to be able to support parents to safeguard their children. We want to support parents to develop knowledge of the UK child protection laws and any safeguarding concerns, and to support parents to know their rights as well and to know the system. And I'll say that's the impact that we're having and then hopefully that means that less children will be on child protection plans and less children will go into care, and of course children will be safe within their families.
The other element, of course, is working with families who maybe they've had issues with social services, their children have been removed from them, and we work with them, we support them, and based on our work, the judge is saying, okay, I think I can allow those children to go back home now. The joy on the faces of the parents and the children to be reunited with their children after so many months or even years of being separated from their children is something that I feel there's no word to describe it.
The other thing what Manchester has been able to benefit from is Debbie is part of some of our strategic partnership working, and that means that the City of Manchester get the benefit of Debbie's experience. We have some steering groups that look at our work connected to community safety partnership. We've had the BASNet action plan and training, and social workers in Manchester have benefited from training and support that's been on numerous different areas, mental health and well-being, supporting of families, a whole range of sort of different safeguarding.
The number of people we've been able to help over the past 20 years, and I would say thousands of people. I just cannot remember how many, but thousands of people have passed through our doors in the past 20 years. Families, children, young people, community members who are going through different difficulties. And I guess the best part of AFRUCA is knowing how the work that you've done has helped to change lives for the better. And I think that's the greatest thing about the charity. We have young people who were trafficked and they come to our charity. We're able to support them to heal from their terrible experiences. They can get back into education. They're graduating with a law degree, degree in IT, and so on and so forth. And I get to go to some of the graduations because the young people invite me as their auntie. So it's great to be able to support the young people that way. So, but it's great also to see a young person, the shift from when they first come to AFRUCA to when they get to that stage, and that's one of the best parts of being. Of this work.
AFRUCA is doing so well. I can only wish AFRUCA well, and I'm glad to say that I was one of the staff that really contributed to this, and it makes me really proud. I'm so proud of AFRUCA.
I'm really pleased to see AFRUCA reach their 20th anniversary. They've accomplished a lot. The work, I think there's still a lot of work for them to do, so I think the work continues. And I'd like to see their profile increase, both across Barking and Dagenham, but also across the UK. I'd also like to see them get more funding and more recognition for the really important and crucial work that they're doing in our communities, making sure that our children are safe and making sure that we are all aware of the issues so that we can all play our part in resolving them.
My plan or my vision is that the next 20 years of AFRUCA will be able to grow the charity even more. So we've made mistakes, we've learned our lessons, we've improved. Now we want to capitalize on all of that. We want to consolidate. I think consolidation is the right word. So the next 20 years is about consolidation. And I hope I'm still alive in the next 20 years to see all the aftermath of all the hard work. But certainly the 20 years of AFRUCA will determine, because one of the issues that's been upmost in my mind is how can we create organizations that last? They don't just come for 5 years, 6 years, and then they disappear. In this country, we have lots of charities that have been around for 100 years, 150 years. That's my vision for AFRUCA. So in the next 100 years, the people alive then, because I surely would not be, it's going to be impossible, but they will be celebrating the 100 years of AFRUCA. That is my vision for the charity. There's no way AFRUCA will be where it is today without the contributions of a wide range of people. So no man is an island. There's no way I would have run AFRUCA by myself without the contribution. There's people I can't even remember their names. 20 years is a long time. But I remember some people, I remember we used to work late in the office at AFRUCA. We're still there 8 p.m., 9 p.m. People are still working because we have a deadline to meet. Somebody left London to move to Manchester, to set up our office in Manchester in 2010. And this is 2020. Because of what they did, because it wasn't me, I didn't move to Manchester. Somebody did that, and because of what they did, we still have our office in Manchester. We're still growing across Greater Manchester, the whole north of England. People made sacrifices in terms of their time, in terms of their, they could have gone on to work somewhere else, like I said, They stayed in AFRUCA to help build AFRUCA. And my hope and prayer is that there will be other people coming on the back of all of that to continue all this work. That is my prayer. But certainly, there's no way we'll be celebrating 20 years of AFRUCA without all those contributions by many, many people from our community. So I want to say thank you to everyone who's been involved in AFRUCA in different ways over the past 20 years. Thank you.
As AFRUCA's work continues to grow and impact on many of the UK's black and ethnic minority communities, its legacy would be its ability to be around for many more years, helping to support and safeguard children, young people and families from abuse, exploitation and harm.
My dream is to eventually do my course and everything and come back and support voluntarily or however way, give something back to AFRUCA, because they have really made a huge impact in my life, and I don't know where I would be today. I don't know if I would have the beautiful place I have today without their input and their support. I don't know if I would have a bit of sanity today without the emotional support, without the constant communication, the encouragement. I don't even know if I would have had the courage to even taking that step to do the course I'm doing now without their support. And I know with my journey with AFRUCA hasn't ended, and I can see that the future is going to be bright, and they're a huge part of my story and they're a huge part of my success so far.